Good afternoon. We're Quantum Advisory and we're an accounting practice and we exist to assist business owners to gain control, grow profits and reduce tax. My name is Brent Butterman, one of the accountants here, and with me today is Gavin Teefel, one of the directors. I'm really glad to have you on board here today. Today we'll be going through governance in action. We'll just run through the agenda before we start. So we still got a couple more joining. So before we get stuck in, just wanted to throw in our usual disclaimer that the information in this webinar is general in nature, no substitute for tailored advice, and specific to your particular circumstances. Now, I guess before we get in too far, I just wanted to start off with a bit of a thought of the day. Now, it seems pretty obvious, but what we're saying is that smaller startup businesses probably don't believe they need a governance structure. But it doesn't matter how big your business is, we believe. Even if you're operating as a sole trader rather than as a company, good governance will benefit your business. So today's session is part one in a two-part webinar series on governance. This first part explores what governance is, the importance and benefits of governance, and how it differs fundamentally from managing a business, the four pillars of governance, and what your governance plan and meeting rhythms might look like. So with that in mind, Gavin, what is business governance?
Yeah, it's a good question, Brent, and thanks all for joining today. So good governance is about structuring, operating and controlling a company with a view to achieving long-term strategic goals for the stakeholders. Those stakeholders include a variety of people. It's most obviously the shareholders and owners of the business, but it can also include the employees, includes the customers, and of course also suppliers. So the effect of good governance is the realization really of your vision and purpose. So it's about setting the vision of the company and about setting the strategy to achieve the vision, setting the purpose for the company, and then of course bringing about accountability. So why is good governance so important? So at a base level, good governance allows a business to keep operating so that shareholders or owners continue to invest in the business. It's so that funders such as banks and, for that matter, private funders will continue to fund the business during times of growth as well as through difficult times. It's so that team members will continue to have faith in the business and are engaged in their roles, meaning that we have the best possible chance of retaining key talent and key employees. It's important so that customers will continue to support the business, perhaps maybe increasing their annual spend and ultimately referring new business. It's important to suppliers so that they continue to supply the business and to provide credit because they can always sense a stable business environment where good governance is occurring. And then another very important point about it is that regulators such as tax bodies and other regulatory authorities, they'll allow the business to keep functioning because it's meeting all of its obligations.
It's a good summary, Gavin. It really shows how important it is, not just from a management level, but in all areas of our business. And it has a lot of different benefits. You know, there are many measurable benefits of putting governance processes in place. Here's some of the 5 most significant ones. So better governance brings about a planning focus, and the outcome of better planning is better implementation and execution of new business opportunities. Enables better support from funders, as you've touched on, which is essential when your business is experiencing rapid growth or when times are challenging, because you'll devote a little more time to working on your business as opposed to being solely focused on the technical aspects. You'll also put strategies in place to improve your working capital and overall cash flow. Now, third, we have, a part of governance, wearing a governance hat, involves assessing and mitigating risks in the business, rather than just adopting a laid back or she'll be right business practices. Tackling risk head on simply helps you as a business owner sleep better at night. And then regularly putting on your governance hat encourages you to focus on how your business is structured from a people perspective, including roles and responsibilities. So your ability to step back from the business. And simple changes to your structure can help you step back and have more discretionary time, if that's what you want. And finally, good governance maximises the value of the business for shareholders. And this is the overarching objective of governance. So having said that, many business owners naturally get confused between their governance role and the operational role. For example, managing a team of people or selling to customers. So it's really important that we understand the key differences. So we've still got a bit of a summary of the different roles here, just to get that understanding of the different hats that people wear in any business. So we call this diagram the 10 hats organisation structure. And this mindset can be applied to any business, big or small, startup mode or mature, whatever it might be. And it also applies where you don't trade as a company. For example, sole traders, partnerships, charities, the basic fundamentals are the same. The shareholders fund the business. The directors are in a governance role and responsible for setting the direction of the business. Even if your business doesn't trade as a company, governance is still required. And so we've got a line there just to really highlight that distinction. Above the line represents the strategic side of the business, and more on that shortly. Below the line are all the operational roles in the business, which we'd all be very familiar with. The function of leadership to implement the plan. The product or service department creates product or services for customers. The function of the operations department to generate cash. The marketing department generates leads, and the sales department converts those leads into sales. Finance department manages the cash. Admin and technology create efficiency. HR maximises team engagement. So they all are drivers to really improving the operational side. And what we see is many business owners wear at least 3 hats. They're the owners, so they fund the business. They all also often work in the business in one or more of the 8 operational departments. And then the third hat that they need to wear from time to time is this governance hat. And that involves, stepping back from the day job, getting above this line and being in more of a strategic role. So Gavin, can you give us just a bit more around the difference between governing and managing?
Yeah, that's good, Brent. So on the slide here, we can see a diagram showing the differentiation between the role of managing and governance. So when managing, your role is operational in nature and you are accountable to the board. Your job is to implement the strategies and deliver the company's purpose and achieve the vision. So you do this by staying on track to achieve your goals and then managing these various departments. When governing, your role is strategic and you're accountable to the shareholders or to the owners. So your job in this role is to set the vision and to determine the strategies to achieve that vision. And this is done by determining the business's purpose, setting an effective governance culture and holding people to account, and then in making sure that the compliance is effective. So these 4 aspects of governance in action are often referred to as the 4 pillars of governance. Brent, you could give us a bit of an overview of those.
Yeah, I think that's really starting to make that differentiation quite clear. So I suppose just to get in a bit more detail of the 4 pillars of governance. First of all, we have purpose. So the board leads the exploration and development of a company's purpose, its goals, and the strategies to achieve those goals. Then we have culture. So this means the board works as a team to deal effectively with the right issues at the right time. It creates a culture that welcomes challenge and open but not personal debate, candor and trust. We have accountability. So governance holds management to account through informed oversight. It does not, however, do management's job. Instead, it ensures the company's purpose and strategy are understood by management and implemented according to a clear plan with proper deployment and performance management. Then finally, compliance. So governance just ensures that the company is and remains solvent. It also ensures that financial reports are accurate and the business complies with regulatory bodies such as tax authorities, associations, and various government regulators. So I suppose that's just the fundamentals of governance, Gavin. You might be hearing this and think it sounds complicated. Does this really apply to small business?
Yeah, it's no doubt a question that many of you have right now is, does governance really apply to a small business, or how big does a company need to be to benefit from a governance structure? We strongly believe that most businesses, even small ones, will benefit from more effective governance. So it raises the question then of how to implement a simple governance framework. So how do we apply these principles in my business? So what we need is a simple schedule of regular governance projects and actions so that we progress from acting in an ad hoc or a laid back manner to working under a framework that promotes accountability. Because without a framework or system, it's likely that nothing will change and you'll continue to spend your time wearing your operational hat without devoting proper time and energy to governance.
That's good. And I want to just really emphasize simple in that it doesn't need to be a complicated process. We can keep it simple. So just to ensure that it happens. And one of the best ways to keep governance simple in a business is to create a governance work schedule. And this identifies two things: the projects and actions that must be done each year so that opportunities are realised and risks are managed. And secondly, the best time in the year for completing those projects and actions. So let's take a look at an example of an annual governance work schedule. Now, this schedule is based on a calendar year. However, you can change the months to align with your financial year if you prefer. So on the left, we have projects and actions that the board needs to implement to live into the principles of good governance. Now, not all items will be necessary in every business. So every business should customise the work schedule according to their needs. So we start with a strategy, a one-page business plan, which should be updated quarterly. The business plan takes a 12-month view of the business and sets the strategy for the coming year, along with 12-month goals, cascading down to 90-day goals and actions. For more complex or perhaps high-growth companies, a full strategic plan that takes a 5-year view of the business might be more appropriate. However, for smaller business, a 12-month business plan is perfectly adequate. Then move on to roles and responsibilities. So that is the organisational structure of the business, starting with an organisational review of the 10 departments of the business. Let's say in March, in this example, a review of roles and responsibilities 1 month later. Next, we have budgeting and forecasting. So the initial draft would typically be done in May, the final budget approved in June. We have performance. So that's the monthly board report and the management report showing how the business has performed under budget. We also like to look at risk. So that is updating the risk register every 3 months. The annual insurance review, annual review of key contracts such as key customers, suppliers. We'll cover that risk register in more detail and provide attendees with a free template in a future webinar we have planned. Next, we've got the compliance section. So in this example, we have bank covenants in place, which we need to review them monthly to make sure we're complying with those covenants. And then finally, an annual evaluation of how the board is performing in January.
That's a good overview, Brent. And an important point to make is that the directors are not necessarily completing all the projects and actions. Responsibility and doing aren't the same thing. However, there are 2 overall responsibilities in this work schedule that directors cannot delegate, and that's strategy and risk.
Yeah, 100%. And this work schedule is just about keeping it simple and making sure that the core activities are happening. So it's best practice for business to complete the projects and actions in this work schedule. And our most successful clients make sure that their business is directed and managed in this way. However, we can imagine that in some of your businesses, these things aren't happening, and we want to make it simple. It's okay. We can start small. The best place to start is just having this simple one-page business plan, have a forecast in place, make sure you have regular management reports that show you whether your business is on track. So governance is a journey. It's not a destination. We learn on the job and we grow capability as we go. So I suppose so far we've covered the fundamentals. And we might be thinking this doesn't apply. For different size businesses, how often should we meet?
As we can see, that's a question that has a different answer according to the type of business, size of business, industry that you happen to be in. But for smaller, less complex businesses, a quarterly meeting cycle may be adequate. For more complex businesses and maybe those in high growth mode, or we're experiencing unusual trading conditions, or have significant opportunities or risk to address, monthly may be advisable. In fact, in the current business environment, some boards are meeting more frequently. We've seen some do this on a fortnightly basis. So the main thing is to agree on meeting dates months in advance and to make sure that they're in everyone's calendars, and then to have an expected meeting rhythm, for example, the second Tuesday of each month or whatever the case might be. But I think the issue of meetings being frequent, we've seen that to be beneficial, haven't we, Brent?
Yeah, I want to sort of pick up on that because 18 months ago we had businesses that were just working on a quarterly rhythm. When COVID hit, obviously a massive change. No one had that in their future plan, and they moved to fortnight reporting. So that's not a static thing either. It's something that will change over time as the business grows, but as the external environment changes as well.
That's right. And it's been interesting to see a lot of the businesses that adopted the discipline of that as a result of COVID. A lot of them have maintained it now as they've recovered from it, and are certainly proving the benefits of the discipline of the regular meeting rhythm. So in a small business, a meeting shouldn't be long, shouldn't take more than a couple of hours, maybe 3 hours at most. The key is ensuring that any board reports, for example, management reports or whatever the case might be, to make sure they're circulated well before the meeting and not at the meeting. What this does is stops the board meeting from becoming a meeting of discovery where everybody gets distracted looking at the reports rather than focusing on decisions that can be made as based on the reports, and also stops the meeting from running over time.
Exactly. We no one loves spending all their time in meetings, and we don't want that to be an impediment to getting things done. And so with that in mind, we've put together just a bit of a board meeting agenda, which you can use. So I've got a sample here on the screen. All right, and the agenda is going to be the same for each meeting. So it makes it easy for the board to get into that natural rhythm. So first of all, we have administrative. So this is just reviewing the minutes of the last meeting and checking any action items have happened and where they're up to. We have just a review of the reports, a review of the management reports, and a review of the risk register. We've got strategy and decision making. So how we're tracking against our strategic plan, any updates that might be required, any information to note, so anything that the board needs to be made aware of for the quarter or month, whatever the period may be. We have our action calendar. So this is obviously just to review any actions from the meeting and ensure they are assigned and have a due date. And then we have our closing in the meeting. And we've also got a date set for the next meeting. So pretty basic. It's not rocket science, but don't underestimate the power of a simple agenda. This agenda is designed to create accountability and ensures that people get their reports in on time and that uncompleted action items from the previous meeting are carried over so they don't fall through the cracks. So I suppose when it comes down to governance, it really, we've sort of boiled it down to these 7 skills. They're not always natural skills to business owners, but they can be nurtured. I imagine when you went into business, it was probably because you had a passion for your product or your service. So it's quite natural that your current skill set revolves around the technical aspects of the business, how to make and deliver your products and services, and how to sell them. But these skills here are learned skills, and in business you learn them on the job through education, such as this webinar, and then with the support of your advisors. So and then probably most importantly through experience. So let's cover off on these skills and discuss how you can develop them further. So first of all, it just comes down to we need to understand our financials, and sometimes this isn't a quick learning process for many directors. It starts with understanding and then learning to interpret your financial reports. This includes annual financials, your monthly management reports, and your cash flow forecast. These are things that you can get help with. Understanding yourself and others. So this is just growing your awareness in this area. Helps with understanding key people's strengths as well as their motivators and stresses. It's vital to good governance. Focused planning. So this is developing the skills of focused planning. Enables you to spend time on what really matters to the long-term success of the business, rather than being distracted by the many urgent but unimportant activities that are insignificant or should just be delegated. Directing. So that's the fundamental purpose of a business, to create value for others. A great director does this by directing others in the business professionally and with humility, and then managing to ensure performance outcome. A person with this skill manages people by giving them outcomes to achieve, not tasks to do. So that means being comfortable in taking the risk of letting others come up with a solution. This helps people to actively take responsibility. And then we have just this area of leading. So leaders obviously want to inspire their team with the purpose of the business. They connect everything to the purpose because they know that without a clear purpose and vision, people tend to go their own way. And then teaching. So people are prepared to teach, excited by the process of learning and the potential they see in people. So it's a fair bit there, Gavin. What is the right size governance?
Yeah, it's a good overview, Brent. And again, that's a question no doubt in everyone's mind as to what the right size of governance is. When a business is small, the governance, as we've said, tends to be ad hoc or laid back. But then on the other hand, when a business is large, governance can get too complex and too really bureaucratic. So best governance for all sizes really involves sort of 4 components really. First is that the governance is everything that's needed and nothing that's not. The second thing it needs is commitment, that everybody's on board with it. Third thing is humility, as Brent's just spoken of, and then lastly, it's very important that there's consensus right throughout the organisation. Consensus with the government, do you think, Brent?
Yeah, consensus without groupthink. So that every person involved in governance is making a decision based on its own merits rather than deciding things together. So we're having that sort of dialogue. So make sure you join us for the second part of our 2-part series, Boards That Deliver. And at this session, we'll cover the 4 pillars of governance in more detail. Now, our aim is to help you take what you've learnt today and implement some positive change in your business. So what's the next steps? Well, first of all, if you do nothing else, register for our part 2 once a registration link comes through. And of course, we're here to help you should you ever need it. We can provide you with this complimentary annual work schedule after the webinar, along with a recording, just so you can start to plan your governance tasks and actions for the coming year. For those of you, who may have recognised that they need help with your governance, we can work with you to develop a governance framework plan. And we'll go into this plan in a bit more detail during our next webinar. So make sure you come along to that if you're not ready to commit to a governance planning process. So that wraps up what we wanted to go through today. Is there any questions from the audience that they want to cover off? Do we have a good one-page business plan template, Gavin?
Yes, we do, and we can make that available.
I think with the one-page business plan template, we've got a very simple one, which we can run through with you and send through. Once again, simplicity is key, but we can certainly help out with that. Got another one here. Understand the importance of governance in setting strategy, but doesn't strategy have to change quickly sometimes? What would you say to that, Gavin?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Strategy certainly does have to change quickly, and we've seen that, particularly in this last 18 months. So strategy is set, but I think that the challenge to good governance and what good governance will do is to be able to move quickly and remain nimble, and through the discipline of regular meetings, be able to adapt quickly so that the strategy is adjusted to react to trade and market conditions. Do you think, Brett?
Yes, and it's like we said earlier, our business plan is set 12 months in advance, so we're always thinking long term. But if we're only meeting on a quarterly basis, then we're able to set specific action items around it on a quarterly basis. But the quarter 3, quarter 4, looking ahead, most of the time is up for grabs. So it really requires, as we said, responding to the external environment. Now we've got another one here. How can I set up a governance framework that isn't overkill for a small business? Most of what you're saying makes sense for larger business, but how does it apply to smaller ones?
Yeah, it's another good question, and I guess it really ties into what we mentioned earlier as to how applicable governance is to a small business. Of course, the issue being that normally we get tangled up in the operation of the business, and we have to do that. But whether we're giving enough time and enough consideration, or stepping back occasionally to work on the business, not in it, or to give due consideration to the issue of governance, do you think?
Yeah. And as you said, the annual worksheet will help sort of give you a framework to work around. And then last one here we've got is, what if there aren't enough people in the business who understand the financials?
Another good question. Not all aspects of governance are financial, but that said, if you don't understand the financials, get help to understand them. Do you think, Brent?
Yeah, get experts in. Talk to your advisor just about the financials. Also, I think having part of this regular meeting rhythm with and having the meeting based on some reports, as you start to review those numbers and sort of query any variances to the plan, you even just start to understand it just by discussing it with the board that's involved in your governance. That's good. I'll just see if there's any others. Looks like that's just about it. All right, so we might just wrap up today just with a parting thought. Do you want to run through this, Gavin?
Sure. What we thought was quite a good quote, that the board's role is to pull management out of the trees to see the forest. So what we'd say is make a simple plan today, commit to at least 3 actions, that you'll take away as a result of today's webinar. Write them down, give each one of them an owner, put some dates around them, and remember that if you need our support, we're certainly here to help.
Yeah, that's good. All right. Well, thanks for everyone attending, and we thank the attendees for their participation. There'll be a short feedback form as you exit the webinar. We really appreciate anyone's comments, suggestions that they have, and don't forget to register for our next webinar. Thanks, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Goodbye.